Hi, everyone. It is Dr. Angela Natoli from the Chiropractic and Functional Neurology Center. Today, I am sitting down having an interview with Jennifer Patriarca. Hey, Jen.
Hey, how are you, Doc?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Good. So Jen is a standard process rep. That's one of the main nutrition supplements that we carry in our office. And I thought, who better to ask for some immune boosting, immune support protocols than Jen. She's been at Standard Process for 17 years and knows her stuff backward and forward. She's always my go-to. So Jen, why don't we talk a little bit about why do we need to supplement our diets now? Why can't we just get everything through, just eating healthy?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, because of conventional farming, and conventional farming is the use of pesticides and herbicides, and they don't use what's called correct crop rotation to replenish the soil. We're not getting the nutrients in the plants because they're not in the soil. And so what we need to do is we need to supplement our diet, unfortunately, with organic whole food supplements. So ideally we want to eat organic whole foods. But unfortunately we can't get enough nowadays because of not only conventional farming, but even organic. We live in a really toxic environment, unfortunately. All of us are surrounded by everyday toxins in the air, in the water. So, and even our own toxins that we make just from breathing and eating every day. And so, we are highly stressed, unfortunately.
A little bit.
Yeah. So you add all those factors together, and that is an increased demand for nutrition that you cannot meet with just eating alone.
Absolutely. So why Standard Process over, just getting basic vitamin C at Walmart or somewhere like that? Why Standard Process?
Well, as I mentioned, if you can't eat organic, raw, whole foods, your best alternative is organic, raw, whole food supplements. Most of what you're going to get over the counter is what we call a synthetic. So it's made in a lab at a really high dose, very cheaply. What we do at Standard Process is we have organic farm, where we grow 80% of what goes into our product. So we are in charge of that product from the non-genetically modified seed all the way to that bottle that you get. And we have the highest certifications of organic, and we have a great, farm manager. Christine has been there for a very long time, and she's really good at what she does, making sure that the soils are healthy. So we, have Dr. Lee, who started Standard Process, was actually looking around for some really great nutrient-dense soil, and when he found it was in his backyard in Palmyra, Wisconsin. So there were some, glaciers that came through there that melted and made that soil really nutritionally dense, and we keep it that way. We use deep artesian wells still to water the crops, so it's just a higher level of nutrition because we're just growing really, really good plants and really, really good soil, and that's how you get the best nutrition. And then we use a special process. Dr. Lee was an inventor, and so he figured out a way to actually process these foods so that we could consume them without destroying the enzymes. So the closest anybody comes is probably freeze drying, which is good. But Dr. Lee developed what's called a high pressure, low temperature vacuum process that allows us to present these supplements to you at a really high potency. The actives that are the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals are still active in those compounds.
So what's the difference between getting a whole food supplement versus something you said, like a synthetic, it's made in a lab? A lot of times, like even vitamin C is one of the best examples of that, right? You can see high amounts of ascorbic acid sold in bottled form. It's synthetic, obviously, versus say a Cataplex C, something that Standard Process sells.
So the synthetic ascorbic acid, so there's 2 points of view. One is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so we really believe that nature, has the best kind of recipe to supply the nutrition. So a long time ago, someone made the executive decision that, ascorbic acid was the most important part of vitamin C. We think that it's really, there's some maybe possibly more important stuff that are in the vitamin C complex from whole foods. Things like, vitamin K and vitamin J, and which are oxygen carrying capacity. Some other things, the bioflavonoids, which are part of the vitamin C complex. So you really, in order for that vitamin to work the way that nature intended, you have to have all the factors. And the only way that you do that is through foods.
Through a whole food supplement. I love the analogy of it's if you just buy ascorbic acid, it's kind of like getting an egg, but
Sure.
only the shell. So
Right.
everything inside of the egg is missing. So you're only getting the shell. So I think that's a good thing for patients to understand when you're getting whole food versus a synthetic lab-made supplement is you're only getting a piece of what you need, not all of it.
Right. And it might not even be the most important piece, right?
Yeah.
So, somebody made that executive decision a long time ago based on studies, and some of those things are changing now and have changed. And so we just have to be really careful about really thinking about what nature intended. And that is, there's other things, for example, catalin, which is our multiple, they discovered, a new vitamin, 7 or 8 years ago. New, I say in quotes, it had always been there, but they had discovered the chemical, specific chemical for this vitamin. Well, we went back and tested catalin, and it was already in there. Mm-hmm. So there's things that we know about, and there's things that we don't know about that are important that are in whole food vitamin complexes.
So then let's move on talking about catalin. Let's talk about what people can do for just everyday immune support, especially during this season and this time. What is a good protocol for people to be on that's more of a prevention from coming down with bacteria infections, viral infections, other things? What is something that you would suggest as an everyday protocol?
Sure. So, our immune system is it's a play of several organs and several systems of the body. So we have an immune alliance. And in order for that immune alliance to work the way that it should, we need to get all the vitamins and minerals, right? And so catalin, which again is our multiple, is super, super important because it's supplying everything that we need for complete support of the system. When Dr. Lee started Standard Process, when he developed catalin, he thought it was the only product he'd ever, put together. It was complete. It had your B's, C's, E's. So anyway, vitamins work best, of course, in their complexes, and catalin is a must for a foundation. So 3 twice a day is what we suggest of the catalin, and then cod liver oil. Maybe some of your older patients might remember back in the day they had to take their tablespoon of cod liver oil. It was pretty popular. It is one of the best foods that you can do to not only support mood and heart and a bunch of other anti-inflammatory pathways, but to really support the immune system. So you want a naturally occurring cod liver oil with natural vitamin D and vitamin A. And we do have a really great Norwegian unaltered cod liver oil at Standard Process. And you want to take 3 to 4 of those a day.
Nice.
So those are just those are your raw basics, right? That's what everybody should be taking on an everyday basis. If you feel like you want to enhance your immune support preventatively, Echinacea Premium is a great product to have on hand. You can take Echinacea all the time. I know there's a myth out there that you shouldn't take Echinacea all the time, but it's actually best taken all the time. And it is the prophylactics herb for any sort of immune challenge. So Echinacea would be something right now that I would definitely add to your regime.
So to the catalin and the cod liver oil and possibly an Echinacea. Okay, so
and it has to be the right Echinacea. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So the Echinacea has to be a root extract. So at MediHerb, they specifically use a root extract that's really high in something called alkylamides. You don't need to know that, but you just need to know really good quality Echinacea. It has to be a root extract high in alkylamides. And as MediHerb has tested many on the market, there's not a lot out there that have high alkalimide content. And so you really want to make sure that we at Standard Process, we of course use MediHerb, which has one of the best sources of alkalimides in echinacea. It's been clinically proven to support the immune system. We had a small study done at the NIH with business travelers that showed it prevented immune challenges while traveling. So make sure that you're getting a really good quality echinacea. If you're sucking on the tablet or you're tasting the extract, it should make your tongue tingle.
Okay, so that's how you would know.
Right.
Okay, so that's good information. I think that's important with all of the supplements too, like cod liver oil. There's a ton of fish oils and things that you can get out there that are loaded with toxins, maybe mercuries that you can get quote unquote cheaper, but may not be the best quality.
Correct.
So Standard Process is highest quality and it's only sold through healthcare practitioners, correct?
Correct.
So that's why I feel so comfortable giving that to my patients, because you know what's in it, and we know that it's safe and the best of the best. So if somebody does come down with, say, some symptoms, you know, sniffles, cough, something like that, not that we're diagnosing anybody or anything like that, but just in general, someone starts to feel that immune response coming on, that general malaise that we feel when we're not feeling that great, some fatigue, what would be a good way to kind of pump up that support of the immune system during that time?
That's a great question. We have a combination of a couple nutrients. So calcium lactate is the first one. It's probably the most important nutrient as far as allowing the body and the white blood cells to respond to you know, whatever the body is dealing with. It actually promotes what's called phagocytosis, so that's the engulfment of the bacteria, and also chemotaxis, which is the movement of the white blood cells toward the pathogen. So super important. There's good studies out there that show actually critically ill patients who were septic that actually responded, the mortality rates were higher in those patients that had low serum calcium. So calcium is super important. We at Standard Process use something called calcium lactate, which supports normal immune function and can be part of that initial response. Also Cataplex C. So this is a whole food vitamin C complex. Again, super important for you know, supporting phagocytosis and some other things, but just helping your body to, again, support that normal immune response or challenge. And then something called Cataplex F, which are basically just unsaturated fatty acids. We use a flax source, but this helps. We want to make sure everybody knows about vitamin D. Vitamin D moves calcium from the small intestine to the blood, but we need to take calcium and move it from the blood to the tissue. And that's what these unsaturated fatty acids do. So Cataplex C, Cataplex F, calcium lactate. I would probably add one more into that, and I would use something called andrographis complex. It's a combination of andrographis, echinacea, and holy basil. These herbs are incredibly useful and to support an acute immune response.
I love andrographis. That's probably one of my favorites. I think that that's my go-to when someone has something going on. And even for me, that's the one that I noticed the biggest benefit from the fastest. So it's so important to kind of follow what we're saying, right? And to live that lifestyle. So before I reach for any kind of medications or anything like that, these are a lot of the things that both of us, I'm sure, do, and a lot of my patients do as well. Now, you can use these with medications, correct? Most things are, it's because it's just a food source. So if you do go to your primary care physician and you end up getting, you know, they suggest that you need medications or other therapies, supplements are okay with that. Is that correct?
That is, depending on, well, of course, what the medication is. I would say in general, a lot of the things that, of course, check with Dr. Angela and, you know, if you do have questions, but I would say in general, if you're not on anti-rejection drugs, so you haven't had an organ transplant, and maybe a couple other things, you're probably okay. But again, you know, check with Dr. Angela and just run those by her. But I would say the majority are fine. And there's a lot of good cases where there's what's called drug herb synergy. So they really work well together.
Perfect. So yeah, people don't have to be afraid of doing immune support plus other therapies as well, which is really great that that's a whole food supplement, because it's just basically like eating food. There's a low chance of being allergic to anything as well, correct? Unless you're allergic to a food, essentially.
Correct.
So, and I think that's so helpful for patients to know and to understand the safety of all of this that we're telling you. So what are some of your go-to supplements that you would suggest patients maybe just keep on hand, in case they start not feeling great, maybe just to keep some things in the medicine cabinet? I know andrographis is mine that I never go without, and a few others. So what are some things that you would keep on hand or that you would tell patients to keep on?
So those three that I mentioned, the calcium lactate, the Cataplex F, and the Cataplex C, definitely something to keep on hand, as well as the andrographis. Those are, again, as Dr. Angela said, like the go-tos. There's also something called Thymex that really helps to support the normal immune response also in something like this. If you wanted to add something like Thymex to that and to have on hand, it's great for kids. We also have something called Conjaplex, which is a combination of a couple of the nutrients that I talked about: calcium lactate, vitamin A, vitamin C. If you used Conjaplex, you'd have to use it in higher doses. But if you use that along with Cataplex F, you would get a combination of Cataplex C and calcium lactate. So that's something you might want to have in hand. We have it in a chewable, which is great for kids. It's cherry flavored. We sweeten it with a little bit of beet juice. So it's a really good alternative for kids too. We also have a chewable Catalin and a chewable tuna for kids as well. So I would say the Conjaplex, the Thymex, andrographis complex, Cataplex C, Cataplex F, calcium lactate, those are definitely things to have on hand in your medicine cabinet. And so at the first sign of something, you can support that normal immune response or challenge.
Perfect. All right. So anything else, any other tips or advice that you'd like to give patients before we sign off, Jen?
No, just make sure they're getting good sleep and they're eating well. The typical things that I'm sure you've talked about with your patients. That's 85% of the battle is just eating well too. Of course, in support of the nutrition, but you're in good hands with Dr. Angela, so I'm confident.
So yeah, basically you can't eat your way out of or supplement your way out of a bad diet is what you're saying, right? So you can't just do these things and then go eat fast food every day or something like that. So it's important to engulf all forms of health: exercise, adjustments, nutrition, supplements, all of those things to keep the immune system in tip-top shape, essentially.
Absolutely.
So Jen, thank you so much for your tips and advice today. We appreciate it. Hope we'll do some more like this. And thank you again for joining us today. Everyone have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.